Okay, rather than be paralyzed by perfection, I thought I would pull together some really quick thoughts around how to practice, not only make your handwriting better, but also improve the precision of your hand-eye coordination when you're actually drawing. And some of the materials that I have set aside are very basic things that we all probably have around the house, or at least have quick access to either in the office or stopping by the store and picking up some supplies, or even ordering some simple things off the web. So really basic stuff. I've got 8.5 by 11 printer paper, right? Something that I just pulled off the color printer. Now I happen to have a pre-printed format. I made a PDF of these infinity figure eights to help just quickly illustrate some of the warm-ups, and then I'll show you another couple of exercises. And everything that I have here, pretty basic stuff. I'm a big fan of Sharpie and Crayola and Papermate and even Tombow markers, all different thicknesses of line, whatever you're most comfortable with. Today I'm just going to use a straight up standard Sharpie fine point like the one I have here. Okay, let's do some warm up. The first thing you need to do, much like runners or people that are prepping for a marathon, if you will, is you need to get loosened up, whether you're stretching or starting out with some simple exercises. And the way that I'm going to go about doing this, and you can do this too, you don't have to have this template, though I may make this available as a PDF, but you're just going to start out making some figure eights or infinity marks on a sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper. So what I generally like to do is start out at about the size that I'm showing you here. And what I'm doing, first thing I'm going to do is find a Sharpie that's not as dry as this one. I never know what I'll grab, but even still I can still illustrate warming up, right? So I'm just loosely tracing this line. I'm going to switch to another Sharpie. That one is going to have a funeral because that one's dead. Okay, I think this one should be good. And the goal here is to just loosen up your wrist. Notice how I'm using my entire forearm as I'm making this infinity mark or this figure eight. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just warm up. This is just stretching. This is just loosening up, making these marks. And you can see how I'm starting to improve some of the precision of making that mark. And you can go on to practice some that are a little bit wider, perhaps. That'll build a slightly different muscle memory, right? But you're working on going from rough when you originally start to smoothing out these movements. It's always a good idea to practice these much larger. And in fact, when I was in art school, my figure drawing instructor had us do these warm-ups on large 18 by 24 sheets of paper using your whole arm. And we would spend about 5 minutes at the beginning of class before we would do figure drawing, loosening up. So I really love this simple exercise. It's kind of zen, gets you in the zone and warming up. And certainly you can practice these vertically, much smaller. So I've got a much smaller figure eight, right? We're building different muscle coordination up, and it's also helping with your hand-eye coordination. You're starting to train your brain and your eyes to follow, and you can almost visualize where your hand needs to go next. Right? So I could practice these for as long as it might take for me to warm up. This is a really simple exercise. Get you in the zone, get you ready to go, and after you feel like you've loosened up, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to move on to the next exercise. Okay, just like with this exercise, I've already prepared a printout just to help quickly illustrate my point and show you some of the activities. And so this is all about moving from loosening up with your figure 8 infinity drawings into making some more precise marks. And so there's no rhyme or reason to how these marks get made. You can pick any number of really simple shapes, but you want to work on practicing the precision of making these marks consistently. So here I've got 3 marks and space between them, and I'm aiming to make them about the same height as I draw them, and I'm pulling these down towards me. You could push them up, but you're going to notice that it's a little bit harder to control the line weight. So pull those lines towards you. Same thing if you do these horizontally, right? I can make these marks, move over, make another set of marks. I might start from the bottom, get into a rhythm of working from the top to the bottom. And again, you're trying to train your muscle coordination to be able to make these marks consistently, right? You want to try to make them about the same length. And even as I'm talking, I'm getting distracted, but I'm trying to make equal distance between the marks. Now let's move on to a different style mark. These are small curved lines, and these kind of look like M's and W's a little bit, but the goal is to effortlessly move these marks across the paper. This next one is one of my favorite ones. This really helps build that hand-eye coordination, and you can make a series of dots. In this case, it's a grid of 9. And your goal is to try to make them equal distance between each other and try to line them up visually. This is really going to train your brain and your hands to work together to make those marks exactly where you intend them to be. So I could go on and finish out the rest of these. I'm going to shortcut it just for this example. The next marks are kind of like parentheses or brackets, right? So I could make these curved lines. These are going to be helpful as you build characters like O's and zeros and so forth. So you can practice making those as much as you want. The more that you practice, the more effortless these will become. I love characters like Z's and N's because they get you trained on, trying to make consistent marks, consistent distance from each other, and so forth. So you can see, much like our other marks that we're making, I'm just trying to get some regularity into the characters. And you could see how an N would be very similar. It's always good to work on circles and dots. So in this case, I'm going to make a series of circles or O's, if you will. They look like little eyes. And I'll come back and I'll try to make pinpoint, about as close to the center of those circles as I can. And there's no wrong way to do this. You're just kind of cross-training. These are good little squiggles. All right, you can see how that would be a helpful mark. And you want to focus on making the complete shape. Notice that a few of mine stopped short and they got a little crude because I lifted my hand up. And that's where we want to work on making more fluid marks like I am here. All right, I'll finish out this exercise before moving to the next one. Just making sort of these mountain type shapes, kind of a zigzag, if you will. And you can lift your pen up if you want. That might help make a more precise mark, or you could make something a little more fluid. You could practice going back and forth. And why not just finish out the exercise by making some simple dashes here at the bottom. Okay, so you can build any kind of shape library that you really want, but the goal is not to work on lettering and handwriting or specific drawings, but to just make these marks to help warm up. All right, I'm going to move on to the last exercise. This is really where it all comes together, and you can see, basically what I did was I did my own handwriting inside of Procreate on the iPad, and then I exported a PDF so I could build these practice pages. So I'm going to actually go over top of some practice work that I already started, right? Because I'm building the muscle memory. It doesn't matter what the final product looks like. I'm just going through the steps of making these marks. And if you were doing this without a guided template, you're just building the alphabet here at the top like I have, starting with A, and you're trying to do it in your handwriting. Now, obviously, I've practiced so many times that my handwriting is in all uppercase. So when I write on the whiteboard or in my sketchbooks or notebooks, apparently I'm screaming at everyone because I'm using all caps. But I've been practicing those character styles for so many years that it's become really effortless for me. And I will confess that in high school and earlier than high school, I had horrific handwriting. I moved from cursive to mixed case or sentence case, where you would capitalize the beginning of a sentence or a word that would be capitalized and then using lowercase. And then at some point in my early adulthood, I switched over to this all caps style, and it's kind of become my signature style. So I'm just working on these characters, and notice that I pivoted to doing, 2 or 3 of each character, so I'm really loosening up. And you can do this for as much as you like. There's probably most days I'll find at least a minute or two. This is my version of doodling, which is why my handwriting has become so good, is, I make time every day to practice this, like on an index card. Like if you see some of these smaller practice sheets I have over off the side, I'm knocking everything off the table here. You can see some other examples, and it might be helpful to use 3x5 index card or 4x6 index cards with the rules on them for you as you get started. Gives you a guide, and I can work on just practicing different line weights by using a Sharpie in a lighter color, and then maybe using like a Papermate flare to get that thinner line weight. But you can see there's a hybrid. This is examples of me doing figure eights with Sharpie markers and so forth. So that's really, there's no magical mystery behind this. It's really just a lot of muscle memory that you're building up. And I would argue that the more that you practice it, the quicker your handwriting will improve. And it may take you a little while to develop your own sort of personal style. Mine's very much inspired by casual styles that sign writers and sign painters make. In fact, once I get warmed up, and notice that I just made my 5s upside down. I make a few characters like S's and 5s. I start from the bottom. A lot of people will start. So there's really no wrong way to do this. This is your handwriting. This is your own personal style. And remember that this is practice. So a lot of this may never see the light of day as you're working on developing your own style. And that's really all that we need to do, is just continue to practice until we get a little more comfortable. The nice thing about it is the progress will happen week to week. You'll really start to see your handwriting improve, and I promise that if you stick with it, and you look back at where you started, like hang on to these examples, and you can see where you started, but you'll see a lot of really quick improvement. So I'm thinking about making these worksheet guides available as PDFs, and happy to kind of make them open source to people so that people can download them if they want a little bit of guidance. Now, of course, you'd be making, if you followed along with this, your handwriting development would probably look a little bit more like mine. So you might want to make your own, and you could certainly do that by getting a sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper, and then scanning it in if you have access to a scanner, taking a photo of it, converting it over to like a grayscale, and then printing these off and keeping a stack of them handy. So that's it. Just wanted to get this kind of out into the world. I may be working on developing more video content, and I'm somewhat pleased with how the results came out. I'm still working with lighting and camera setups, and using some of the software to capture and record all this, but hopefully you found this helpful, and I'm delighted to share this technique for anybody that wants to help develop their handwriting and lettering much further.